My name is Giovanni, and I want to talk to you today about why the Resident Evil 3 remake made me scarf down my doubts faster than a box of crullers from Moon's Donuts. My fear while going through the demo was that Nemesis was going to be tedious by interfering with otherwise explorative and atmospheric gameplay. I knew I was going to buy the game since I've played every other mainline entry in the franchise, though I wasn't sure if based on my frustrations in the demo I was even going to finish Resi 3. Now I've realized that the fastest way to spell virgin is with 5 shiny gold S's, indicating the fact that I've 100% completed this game, a feat I've never once done before in all my life. So why did I find this game to be so captivating? It begins with something that I haven't experienced in video games since my very expansive time spent with Red Dead Redemption 2 and Resident Evil 2. See, both these games offered a feeling of extraordinary reward. In the case of Red Dead, reward came from blasting bandits and being an outlaw because after the gun smoke settled, I was treated to cinematic cutscenes exploring one of the most complex characters and stories I've ever encountered. Suddenly, all the cumulative 7 seconds of my life skinning white-tailed deer and picking oregano were rewarded with dramatic storytelling that investigated what makes a man loyal and what happens when structure in a small ecosystem begins to crumble. In the case of Resident Evil 2, gameplay felt rewarding after solving multiple riddles and making sense of areas that felt like Chinese puzzle boxes, where if I shifted one gear or moved a single block, other options opened up. Hearing the sound of a key unlatching the lock to a door made the tension in my gut dissipate, and that looming dread that I was outnumbered, alone, and fighting for my character's life became a feeling of, hey, I can do this. These small victories are offering a feeling of reward because they're working to help me escape the confines of an environment where everything is out to get me. There is sweet relief in completing a tiny objective because there were so many obstacles in the process. Resident Evil 3 Remake combines both a fun cinematic experience with the feeling of constant reward for staying alive. The franchise has progressively become similar to a blockbuster action movie, but Resi 3 mixes action, drama, solid writing, and fascinating characters into a blend that has healed my wounds towards the series more than a green and red herb ground together. This game starts off firing on all cylinders. The opening first-person section is simply Resident Evil at its finest. Resi 7 showcased the power of perspective by sharing Ethan's view with us, and all the atmospheric qualities that game perfected seem to be leading us to the time spent in Jill's apartment. When Jill awakes, there is a raging storm outside, rendered in perhaps the most visually stunning graphics I've seen. From the second Jill gets out of bed, it's clear that although Resi 3 is rendered with the same engine that has made the past 2 games, like the other games before it, Capcom has discovered ways to enhance and push the engine to its full capabilities, so that the storm outside the window rattled my bones as if I were waking from a miserable nap. As we guide Jill through the room with a beautiful and eerie black and white filter, the little light we get in this section does wonders. The static from the television and lightning from the storm offers enough light to see the beginnings of Jill's investigation, and she's made one of these murder boards that as an audience, we recognize from other media as an act of severe intelligence and dedication. This isn't too out of place from past protagonists, as every mainline Resident Evil hero has been extraordinary. Then we see the light from the open bathroom serve not only as a signal for where we as players need to go, but as a beacon of humanity for Jill. The bathroom light reflects off her CD player, confirming with us that this isn't just some superhero character capable of combating monstrous pharmaceutical companies. No, Jill is also a regular chick from the 90s who jams out to music and stacks her CDs in the same lazy pile I've seen anybody who owns CDs does. This isn't just some member of an elite special forces unit, this is a cop who leaves her coffee cups on the bedside table and hangs up donut shop coupons on her fridge. By having us traverse her apartment, Jill feels more like a person than a video game character, and that really hits home once we get to her messy and makeup-filled sink. This is designed to be another familiar sight. When creating this set, I do believe that Capcom researched what every sink owned by each of my ex-girlfriends looks like, because from the open, cosmetic mirror to the bar of soap no doubt melting into the countertop, I've been inside this very bathroom 1,000 times, except thankfully, minus the Glock. And then suddenly, once we've got this feeling of Jill as a humanized being, this happens. This macabre transformation struck me hard due to the fear and confusion present in Jill. It's both her biggest fear to become infected and her largest disappointment to be in a situation where she can no longer protect and serve, all of which is compartmentalized into a scene where she struggles to pull the trigger against her own head. Easily, by far, hands down, my favorite introduction to a video game that's ever been. By the time we wake up once more and realize that what we just experienced was one of Jill's nightmares, I'd say we know just about everything we need to know about her. Our relation to Jill is furthered by walking through her apartment a second time, seeing the open pill bottles, the half-eaten food, the sink full of dishes. This is somebody who is very clearly in a slump, someone who is suffering from their past experiences. Still, we know from her calendar and her research that she's hightailing it out of Raccoon City soon, that she's going to keep fighting the corporate overlords, and that she's not going to stop at anything to survive. Just when these notions become cemented in our minds, Nemesis bursts through her wall and kicks her in the ribs hard enough to shatter her entire body. And yet, notice how seconds after taking a massive amount of damage, she doesn't whimper, she doesn't cower, she snaps to with laser focus and pops Nemi in the face with several 9mm Parabellum rounds. Here, we see that Jill is far more experienced than Ethan, Leon, or Claire in previous games. After all, Jill has a litany of special forces training, and she acts like she's got the reflexes to prove it. Now, I've heard many say that it disrupts the suspension of disbelief for Jill to get right back to her feet after taking such a knock to the ribs. To that, I say, I think that's a good point, but I also think that this is Resident Evil, where characters are frequently launched around in various manners and only centimeters away from grenade and rocket and gasoline explosions. Personally, if a character in this franchise was gawking over every time they got smashed up or fell down or did anything that should have broken a normal person's bones, it wouldn't be that much fun, especially since these characters are often around and in such close proximity to explosions that if in the event where they did survive, they'd probably get that old Voldemort look going because they wouldn't have hair or eyebrows on their head from the concussive incendiary blasts. So then, why don't I mind the fact that Jill gets punted in the ribs by a 9-foot-tall bioweapon like a Peanuts gang football? It's for the same reason that I didn't mind Chris punching boulders into a volcano in Resi 5, or Leon doing any of his cool Matrix shit in Resi 4, or Claire saying, yeah, I should go fight this giant monster using a revolver and a grenade launcher. Nothing bad could happen from that. We're operating under video game logic, and the way I've always seen it is these characters are people who have come in contact with viruses that for the most part were meant to create people with superhuman abilities and recovery capabilities, much like series villain Albert Wesker. Yes, the viruses were then remapped to serve as bioweapons, but I think originally these were meant to help people and make them into the exact kind of sturdy protagonists we see in the series, again like Wesker, but to lesser degrees because they're not pumping their bodies full of viruses and shooting laser beams from their eyes. Chris and Jill and Leon and Claire don't become zombies because they become badasses. I will say what does bother me is the setup for an injury that seems to be present after Nemesis shows up. Jill is getting knocked around in a balls-to-the-walls explosive and fiery escape. She gets beaten and battered, and by the time she's out, I felt that same kind of pain and exhaust in her that I felt in Venom Snake back in Metal Gear Solid 5, where the poor dude can hardly keep himself standing and is stumbling around. Something like that would have been cool, though we don't see it with Jill. She gets hurt, she's limping, and it seemingly disappears. Not the biggest deal and didn't ruin my experience, but a missed opportunity nonetheless. As far as gameplay goes, I can understand how this would be divisive to some series veterans. What I experience as a streamlined version of what makes Resident Evil fun, others might view as a skinned out version of what they loved in the remake of Resi 2. I truly get people saying that they miss the sections of the game that have been removed from the original, like the time spent at the clock tower and the battle with the Gravedigger, though these things didn't bother me too much. We get into muddy territory when we think of what constitutes a remake, and often when we're talking about nostalgic products, it becomes nearly impossible for an entire audience who has had separate experiences arrive at the same answer for what it should be. And that's the exact reason why I think criticism for this game has been very love or hate from what I've seen. To me, a remake means taking the source material, sticking closely to the original version so that it offers the same kind of feeling, though revamped to match modern control schemes and mechanics. This means some stuff may see the boot. In other words, I consider a remake something that takes the good of the old, leaves the bad, and creates an experience that doesn't seem out of date. I love running around Raccoon City in the classic version of 3 from 1998 just as much as the last person, but you can bet your bottom dollar that I was sick and tired of running around the same streets and alleys to backtrack to find a single item needed to open one spot so that I could go to an item box and deposit something I'd later need, only to find that what I really needed was more inventory space to begin with, and that wasn't ever really the glory of item management or city exploration. I love how Resi 3 foregoes complicated puzzles and backtracking in place of a system that promotes quick-paced movements. Despite these changes, what wasn't lost on me was the feeling of being better equipped for a zombie outbreak with characters who have some experience battling formidable foes. In the 1998 Resi 3, ammo was more plentiful, as were the creatures we were expending it upon. And when I look back at my time playing that game as a kid and a teenager, I don't remember the puzzles and reminisce fondly at roaming the streets hoping that I'll click on the right area to find the correct item I need to progress. I remember mixing gunpowder and picking up weapons and blasting my way through city streets, and I really remember going back to the police station and having this meaty man pop through this window and start shooting me with a rocket launcher. I recall the panic and the reward of keeping my sweaty hands glued to a controller so that I may progress to another area in what seemed against all odds. That is a satisfying feeling that is not lost in Resi 3 and is exactly what makes this game so damn good. What kept me coming back to this game over and over were the rewards. The first time through, that was story and cutscenes. Carlos and Jill have a fantastic relationship, and thanks to the incredible voice work of Jeff Shine, Carlos has been completely reworked into a character who is as engaging as he is charismatic. Believe me when I say nobody wants to be left in a cold, cruel, Carlos-less world. The playthroughs afterwards, though, were rewarding because of the various unlockables purchased from the store. Like any sane person, the first thing I bought was the classic STARS outfit, because this, Capcom, is precisely the thing that people who hold this series dear to their hearts appreciate. Since I was a good boy, I avoided the very tantalizing flaming knife and electromodulating shockwave-producing Raiden cannon, and instead opted for infinite ammo weapons and enhancement coins that allowed me to take more of a beating and regenerate my health. These items allowed me to chase down achievements in the records screen and playthroughs to try and work up towards collecting enough points, and what made these points rewarding rather than other games was that you couldn't buy them. You had to earn them by playing the game, just like games used to be when I was a kid. Busting my ass for the infinite ammo assault rifle feels a whole lot of a hell better when I know you can't go to the PlayStation Store and buy that shit for $1.99. Whoever thought that introducing a DLC for Resi 2 that unlocks everything in the game for a few bucks is a snake and a harlot. I want to feel the reward of learning the ins and outs of Resi 3, and the game does a fantastic job at encouraging you to go back through and think about what you did the last time and how you can improve on it. As somebody who's never once did a speed run or tried to rush through a game before, this was the first time I had any feeling of reward from thinking, okay, yeah, if I go down this path and juke past these zombies, I can shave off precious seconds and still have enough supplies to make it through to my next save point. The increases in difficulty for each subsequent playthrough, whether it's standard to hardcore, hardcore to nightmare, etc., it all feels like you've become well prepared. By the time I made it to Nightmare mode and enemies started dropping from the sky right in front of me, I was hardly fazed and ran right past them because I knew they wouldn't have time to attack if I kept up my hustle. Playing the game with this mentality of always being better has made me someone who started on assisted mode because I had no trust in my instincts or capabilities, and now I've become someone who plays on Nightmare and Inferno mode just for fun. I've unlocked everything in a game and still want to play it. I'm still getting over the fact that a game has held my attention for so long that I could even dump this much time into it, but the magic of feeling rewarded in Resi 3 allows you to grow into an expert. You will be perfect dodging past nemesis swings that make you think, whoa, I couldn't do this before? Now this is cake. And better yet, what I realized after unlocking everything in the game and running through it with the rocket launcher was that the greatest joy of beating the game on the hardest, most insane difficulty wasn't unlocking all the records and achievements or getting my first platinum trophy on PlayStation. The best reward of all was the satisfaction of tracing my own development and being able to start a small fry and grow into something much stronger. Just like Nemesis, I felt like I had adapted and overcome the various situations, except I didn't have a mop-haired man dump vats of acid on me. This game is incredible and offers something that I haven't experienced in games for a long time. It reignites nostalgia while also offering gameplay that feels fresh and unique and iterative of the games that came before it. I'll admit, I've just finished my last semester of grad school and was a bartender before we were all asked to stay inside, so I can't say for sure if I would have been as willing to replay this game so many times had it not been for most of my days now looking like this. What I will say is that, as someone who spent the last year of his life teaching college during the day, bartending at night, and trying to pump out essays and manuscripts during any time in between, I've got a backlog of games that I've been meaning to play, that I keep putting off and saying to myself, I'll get to those one day, and the Resident Evil 3 remake completely overpowered all of those. All I wanted to play was that game, and I think the best effect a game can have on you is that you play it so much, you need to put it away until the next time you can pull it off a shelf. Remember it fondly as it boots up on your system, and shoot for the same kind of positive memories it once gave you.